Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the meeting of November 20th. It's a business meeting tonight. It is 6 p.m., and we would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would now like to ask Clerk Perillo to confirm that there is a quorum tonight.
Thank you. Mayor Shepro?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Cassay?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Laux is absent and excused. Trustee Biondo?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Giuliano?
Present.
Thank you. With that, we do have a quorum. Attorney Moran?
Present.
Thank you. Treasurer Gafka?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, if I could ask everyone to stand again. I am going to call for a moment of silence for a valued and very well-known village resident and public servant, Barry Warren. Passed away on Friday unexpectedly, and he, as I said, was a very dedicated public servant who served as village attorney to a number of mayors over the course of the years, including my father, who recalls Barry as a tough attorney, and he held everyone accountable, including my father. So that's not easy to do. But anyway, thank you, and I'd like to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Now, Clerk Perillo, will you please call to order the public hearing?
I will, thank you. We have a public hearing this evening. The proposed local law would amend Chapter 41 of the Code of the Village of Port Jefferson, called Ethics Code of, by adopting a replacement of the current Ethics Code in Chapter 41 of the Code of the Village of Greenport. I'm sorry, I apologize. The Village of Port Jefferson. Apologies. Old habits.
Thank you. So that means we can officially start calling for public comment. Do we want to read? Or let's introduce our attorney, our ethics attorney, Stephen Leventhal. Thank you, Attorney Leventhal, for being here tonight.
Thank you. The board is aware of my history in the field of ethics, but perhaps the public is not. So I am the former chair of the Nassau County Board of Ethics. I am co-chair of the State Bar Association's Ethics and Professionalism Committee of the Municipal Law Section. I have been engaged to provide ethics training and advice to municipalities throughout the state and to the Ethics Office of the United Nations, where I did a full-day ethics training. I am currently ethics counsel to the County of Westchester, the County of Nassau, the town of Hempstead, the town of Oyster Bay, the town of Huntington, the town of Southampton, the village of Sag Harbor, and I think that's it at the present. I think that adopting a code of ethics, an updated code of ethics, a modern code of ethics, a comprehensive code of ethics, is step one in organizing a robust and effective ethics program. Step number two is creating and distributing a plain language guide to the ethics code, providing ethics training to the officers and employees of the municipality, and establishing a website that will have educational materials forms such as frequently asked questions, monograms on such topics as the regulations for receiving gifts and favors, instructions for completing the financial disclosure form, a form for requesting ethics advice, a form for filing an ethics complaint, hearing procedures employed by the Board of Ethics, and the board's procedures for responding to FOIL requests. The primary purpose of the ethics program is not enforcement. It's not rooting out evildoers and bringing them to justice. There are other agencies that have that responsibility primarily, such as the District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office. Our primary goal is offering guidance to the honest officers and employees of the village and helping them to know what the rules are so that they can avoid unintended ethics violations. That is our primary function. And it's done mostly through ethics training, through having these materials that I've described available on the website, and through providing confidential ethics advice to officers and employees when it is requested. So I have drafted a proposed code. The code that is before you as a proposal is the same code that has been adopted with slight local variations by the County of Westchester after a public referendum. It's been adopted by the town of Hempstead, the town of Oyster Bay, the town of Huntington, the village of Sag Harbor. Since our goal is clarity and offering useful guidance, it has several features. First, it's organized into 3 separate sections for ease of use. The first section is a comprehensive code of conduct. The second section is disclosure requirements. And the third section is administration and enforcement. Those are really the necessary features, the important features of an effective ethics program. A clear and comprehensive code of conduct, reasonable disclosure requirements, and effective enforcement. In addition, as I said, a regular training program to keep officers and employees informed, to answer their questions, to inform new members as they're onboarded of what their responsibilities are, new officers and employees. I also will show you in every municipality that I serve as ethics counsel, I encourage the municipality to prepare a booklet that looks like this, which contains in the front, the first few pages are a plain language guide, and it's followed by pertinent sections of the Code of Ethics. And this is a very useful tool. It can be provided to every officer and employee. It can be part of an orientation package when new employees come on board. So the next drafting consideration for me, apart from the organization of this document, is, again, continuing on the theme of clarity. There is a statewide law, Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law, that contains a code of conduct that is applicable in every municipality in the state, with the exception of the city of New York, which gets a pass because it has the finest municipal ethics program in the world. But otherwise, it applies in every town, every village, every city, every county, and even in special districts. We did not want an officer or employee of this village to look at the Code of Ethics, think that they were seeing all of their ethical responsibilities without realizing that there's a state law that also applies. That is a formula for an unintended ethics violation. So in drafting this code, we wanted to achieve one-stop shopping, and we imported all of the regulations from the state law into this code and then some. I believe, as a matter of good drafting practice, that loading up a law with definitions in a definitions section is a trap for the unwary. The meaning of a clause, the meaning of a provision in a law should be clear on its face. And if a term needs to be defined, in my view, it should be defined in context, in the particular section where it's used. I have only two defined terms in this law. They are interest, as in prohibited interests, and relative. The reason relative is a defined term is it's a judgment call as to how wide a net to throw when regulating conduct that involves relatives. And finally, to the extent possible, we try to use plain English in drafting the law. So if I can quickly walk you through the provisions of this law, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. It begins, as I said, with the definitions that I mentioned, and then a section on applicability indicating which particular sections apply to particular categories of people and entities. Then we get into the Code of Conduct, which starts with Section 41-4. The first one is really, I think, the most obvious, and that is it's a prohibition against the use of your village position for personal or private gain. And there's a list of relationships, both personal relationships and business relationships, for whom you may not use your official position or powers and duties to benefit. The next section, 41-5, is prohibited interests in contracts with the municipality. This comes directly from Article 18 of the General Municipal Law. It is really the core provision of the state law. And in a nutshell, it prohibits the village from entering into a contract that will confer a benefit on someone who is in a position, either individually or as a member of a board, to authorize the contract, approve it, authorize payments under the contract, audit bills rendered under the contract, or hire or fire anyone who has the power or duty to do any of those things. If the contract will confer a benefit on one of those people, someone with those powers and duties, it's a prohibited contract. And the concept, there's also the concept of benefit is a little bit broader than that because it applies also to a spouse, a member of your household, a dependent, certain businesses that you have ownership interests or positions with. There are also exceptions, which we need not take the time to go into now. The next section is on recusal. An officer or employee of the village, if this law is adopted, an officer or employee of the village will be required to recuse themselves in connection with any matter that will confer a benefit on any of those persons and entities that we listed in the first section. Now, recusal means having nothing to do with the matter. You have to remove yourself from it entirely. You can't participate in the discussions, the deliberations, the vote, the decision. You can't influence the decision makers. Because you have an actual or potential conflict of interest, you must have nothing to do with the matter.
Steve, maybe
Yes.
one question.
Yes.
On that topic, you can't participate in anything to do with it. Can you listen to the discussions?
Yes. The New York State Attorney General has issued advisory opinions where the Attorney General recommends that you leave the room. My advice to my municipal clients is just to get up off the dais so that there's a visual demonstration of the fact that you're not participating, and go sit in the back of the room, but don't participate. The next section is some exceptions, matters in which you are not required to recuse yourself. For example, if this board were to adopt a zoning change that affected a large portion of this village, many property owners, and your own homes were in that large portion of the village, that would not be a disqualifying conflict of interest because that legislation would affect you no differently than it would affect a very large number of others. A prohibited conflict is one that's personal or private to yourself. And there are other exceptions here, ministerial acts. The reason conflicts of interest are prohibited is because they interfere with the independent exercise of judgment and discretion. If there is no judgment or discretion to be exercised, if you're working in the clerk's office and your responsibilities include taking a document for filing, date stamping it, and putting it in the in-basket, that is a ministerial act. And if your spouse or your child comes in with a document to file and you take it and date stamp it and put it into the in-basket, that would not constitute an ethics violation because there's no judgment or discretion involved. The next section is investments in conflict with your official duties. Essentially, if you have an investment that prevents you in some substantial way from discharging your official duties, that is a prohibited investment. The same principle applies to private employment. Your outside interests have to be compatible with your official duties. The classic example of two incompatible positions is chief financial officer on the one hand and auditor on the other. You look at the duties to determine compatibility. You can't be your own boss. There are restrictions on on seeking or accepting future employment. You know, a lot of these regulations are aimed at inspiring public confidence in government. We don't believe that we have a problem in the village with honesty and integrity. We are trying to promote public confidence in government and give guidance to honest officers and employees. So if someone decides a matter involving an applicant today and tomorrow shows up as the new employee of that applicant, that creates an appearance that perhaps something motivated the official action of that officer or employee. It may not, in fact, have been motivated by personal interests, but we want there not only to be a level playing field, we want there also to appear to be a level playing field. Independent contractors of the village often represent other parties before village boards. If that is the case here, we don't want those independent contractors taking advantage of their access and using undue influence to obtain a result for their other clients. Personal claims are permitted. You can represent others before the village, make claims against the village on your own behalf or on behalf of a family member, unless that claim is a prohibited contract within the meaning of that term, in which case, if you have the authority to decide the claim, to approve payments under the claim, to audit bills, or to hire or fire anyone who can, that would be prohibited. Use of village resources for unauthorized or personal purposes is prohibited. Nepotism is prohibited. Not the employment of more than one family member by the same municipality, but rather having one related party make hiring or firing decisions regarding the other, directly supervise their work, impose discipline, assign them work duties. Coercive political solicitation of subordinates is prohibited. Disclosure or personal use of confidential village information is prohibited. And the next section is a very important one. It's the regulation of gifts and favors. Here is a perfect example of where the state law is inadequate, and it is important that a local municipality supplement the state law with its own local law. The state law is vague. It says you may not accept a gift of any amount or solicit a gift having a value of $75 or more under circumstances where it would appear that the gift was intended to influence or reward an official act. Well, that's a terrible regulation because it doesn't give clear guidance as to what conduct is prohibited. You must somehow surmise what one person's what one person would think the intentions of another person were. You have to get into the operation of two different people's minds. That's not a clear regulation. So in addition to that, while we incorporate that standard from the state law, we also provide that if you ask for a gift from someone, you must first determine whether they have received a financial benefit from the village within the past 2 years. If the gift is offered to you without being requested by you, you can accept it provided you don't know that the person has received a financial benefit from the village within the past 2 years. But if you're asking for it, the burden is on you to investigate. We also have, of course, a carve-out, an exception for those people who would be the normal donors of gifts, family members, close personal friends, and so forth. Gifts given on special, rare, special social occasions like weddings and so forth. And we incorporate a very sensible list of gifts that may be accepted, and that list is taken directly from the state's lobbying law. Things like plaques, items of very little value. You know, you go to a program and they're giving away a coffee mug of no significant value, a plaque that's not of great value. These are the sorts of things that you may accept. We prohibit the inducement of another to violate the code of ethics. And that, I've just run through the entire portion of this proposed law that represents the code of conduct. The next section are the disclosure requirements. And whenever you recuse yourself on a matter, that's called transactional, transactional disclosure. You must disclose the reason for your recusal. Recusal is always coupled with a disclosure. Doesn't have to be a lot of detail, but you have to give a general statement of what the reason is for your recusal. Applicant disclosure in land use applications is also taken from the state law. Applicants in land use applications to the zoning board, the planning board, the building department must disclose at the time of application the identity of any state or local municipal officer or employee that has an interest in the applicant. Annual financial disclosure. The code of ethics requires people holding certain titles to file annual statements of financial disclosure. In addition, there is a category of policymaker. The term policymaker is defined in the law, and the law sets forth criteria for determining whether someone is a policymaker. When the state adopted the financial disclosure law in the late 1980s, it said to local municipalities, if you have a population in excess of 50,000, you will be required to file disclosure statements with a temporary state commission on local government ethics that was established, unless you adopt your own disclosure law by 1990, in which case you can take care of this function in-house. Everybody rushed out to comply within that deadline. And they adopted, actually, the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics developed a set of criteria for determining who were policymakers, and we have incorporated the criteria developed by the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics into this code. In addition, the law that was adopted by the state had a terrible, invasive, difficult, lengthy disclosure statement that officers and employees were required to file. There were some cynics who said that it was designed for the purpose of discouraging challenges to incumbents. In any event, the town of Chautauqua developed their own form, submitted it to the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics, and asked whether that form would meet the minimum requirements of the state law. The Temporary State Commission reviewed that form, tinkered with it a little bit, and said, as tinkered with by us, this form would satisfy the state law. The form that's incorporated in this proposed local law is based upon the form approved by the Temporary State Commission. In addition, I've added a question that is essentially a response to the scandal of a couple of years ago involving the Speaker of the Assembly. If you remember, the Speaker of the Assembly had a big scandal involving applications by clients of his law firm. And so we require disclosure of clients and customers doing business with the village. And we do have some exceptions to protect confidentiality when necessary. For example, if you're a lawyer and you represent clients in matrimonial cases, we're not asking you to disclose their identity, just by way of example. And then we have the section on administration. It establishes a board of ethics. The board of ethics members serve, and it's very important that the board of ethics have a degree of independence. There are several kinds of boards that, in my opinion, are bad ethics boards. One is an ethics board that never meets. So this law requires the board of ethics to meet at least quarterly. The second is a board of ethics that is viewed as under the control of the appointing authority. For that reason, we want features that make the board as independent as possible. I'll discuss those in a moment. And the third type of bad board is a board that is seen as political. And so this code of ethics requires that the board be at least bipartisan in its composition. It's a 5-member board, and the law provides that no more than 2 members may belong to the same political party. The code provides that the members are appointed by the Board of Trustees. Now, I did see, Trustee Giuliano, your comment, your question, whether that should be nominated by the mayor, confirmed by the Board of Trustees, and certainly we can do that. If that's clearer than the present draft, we can certainly provide for that. But the fixed staggered terms of the board members means that the appointing authority can't, in response to an ethics opinion that they don't like, wipe out the board. There'll be one appointment every year. For the board first appointed, one member will be appointed for 5 years, another for 4, 3, 2, 1, and as each term expires, the seat is filled for a 5-year term. I also saw there was a question about residents, whether a certain number of these members should be required to be residents of the village. Well, state law requires that all board members be residents of the village. The powers and duties of the board are to render ethics advice, as I've said. In my view, that is the most important function of the board. To administer the financial disclosure law, to investigate complaints when warranted, and to provide ethics training. Those are the basic functions of the board. And the board, this code authorizes the Board of Ethics to impose to impose fines of up to $10,000 for violation of the Code of Ethics. And frankly, I've never seen a local Board of Ethics impose such a high fine, but that power is very persuasive to officers and employees, for example, when they are recalcitrant in filing their statements of financial disclosure. It's very persuasive to get a letter reminding you that the Board of Ethics has the authority to impose a fine of up to $10,000. Well, the Board of Ethics would impose the fine, and then if the fine was not paid, the Board of Trustees could authorize the village attorney to bring an action in court to enforce it. And there are other actions that can be taken, recommendations to the village Board of Trustees to impose sanctions, referrals to the district attorney's office when warranted. The board is authorized to grant waivers of certain restrictions in this code when it's in the best interest of the village to do so. And I think I've now covered it. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Question?
Yes.
I have a ton of questions, but I'll start with this one because it's the most recent section that you covered.
Before you do, I have to tell you, I only answer easy questions.
This is going to be easy for you.
Okay.
So if you are looking at qualifications of the people that express interest in and want to be appointed or put themselves up for the Board of Ethics, what are the primary qualifications that you would look for?
Good judgment. Very often, a municipality will appoint religious leaders to such a board. I'm not crazy about that because we don't want religious leaders to bring with them whatever their code may be. It's fine if they can be made to understand that it's not the kosher rules. It's the code of ethics that's been adopted by the Board of Trustees of the village that governs. So if they can be made to understand that, that's fine. Law school dean, retired law school deans, retired judges, lawyers, members of the community who are respected, community leaders, people with a certain amount of gravitas. And of course, as I said, the board should be bipartisan at least. So I hope I've answered your question.
No.
Okay.
Another question. Sorry, I'll just go for a couple of minutes here. So the village has a lot of not-for-profit entities that we work hand in hand with, we partner with. There's the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Improvement District, there's the Conservancy, there's the Explorium, LISEC, and on and on. Is this code of ethics, does this code of ethics apply to these boards? If we work so closely hand in hand with them, should they be expected to follow the same ethical guidelines?
This code of ethics regulates the conduct of village officers and employees. It doesn't regulate the conduct of officers or employees of an independent not-for-profit agency. However, in my view, those entities should all adopt their own codes of ethics, and their codes of ethics should address the same themes as those that we've been discussing tonight. It doesn't have to be identical, but it has to advance the same goals.
There are a lot of decisions going on with fundraising and funding allocations that are relevant to village activities.
You know, the village Board of Trustees could also adopt a procurement policy that says that any not-for-profit or other similar organization that this village funds must have its own code of ethics.
Thank you. When you talk about recusal, and there's some content in here that talks about if a board member, committee member needs to recuse a certain number, it doesn't say how many times, but what's the guideline that you look at for the number of recusals of somebody who's sitting on a planning, land use board or any board.
There's no magic number, but if your outside activity, whether it be a business or an outside employment position, if your outside activity is inevitably and frequently interfering with your ability to discharge your duties as an officer or employee of the mayor, then that's a pretty good indication that the position is incompatible with your village position. And then pursuant to both the provisions of this code and case law going back to the 19th century, that would be a incompatible position, and you cannot hold two incompatible positions. Recusal does not cure incompatibility. If you have a position of outside employment or an outside business, and it's not inherently incompatible with your official duties, nevertheless, a conflict of interest may arise from time to time. There's nothing wrong with that, provided you recuse yourself. That cures that conflict. But if it's occurring frequently and inevitably, then that is most likely an indication that the positions are incompatible, and then an incompatibility is not cured by recusal.
Thank you.
It's my understanding, as the board, that we're here to listen to the public and then incorporate public comments into board discussions in the the finer points of this. But I'm very glad that the village is looking into clearly defining the ethics code and serving the public justly.
Thank you for those remarks. I just realized that there was one other provision that I should have mentioned, that it's in that's in that same section about outside employment activities. And this is important because it comes up very frequently. State law and this code prohibit an officer or employee of the village from agreeing to receive or from receiving compensation in connection with any matter before his or her own department, board, or agency. So it won't be unusual for me to give a presentation to a municipality somewhere and to have someone approach me afterwards and say, I'm a member of the planning board, or I'm a member of the zoning board, and every once in a while a matter will come before us, and the chairperson of the board will say, I'm recusing myself, I'm the architect who drew up these plans, or I'm the engineer on this project, I'm recusing myself, and they'll get up off the dais and go sit in the back of the room. Well, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's prohibited by law, state law, and if this is adopted by local law. And the reason is not because we think there's something nefarious going on. The reason is, if I'm sitting in the audience waiting for my application to be called, and I see that the person across the aisle has hired the chairperson of the board to be their architect, I'm going to say, aha, now I know how to get my applications approved in this municipality. Hire the chairperson, and you're in. And we want there not only to be a level playing field, we want there to appear to be a level playing field, because we have two goals. One is to guide and protect honest officers and employees and help them to avoid unintended ethics violation. And the other is to inspire public confidence by ensuring not only the reality, but also the appearance of integrity in government.
"10 years from now, when I'm no longer mayor, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, under this proposed code, am I prohibited from calling organizations that do business with the village to advocate for certain positions that I can have influence over?
No. There are two post-employment restrictions. The first is temporary. It's the revolving door provision. It lasts 1 year, and for 1 year after you leave village government, you may not appear before your former board, agency, or department. And appear means basically communicate with. You can't be the face that makes the presentation. You can't walk the application in. You can't be the voice on the telephone or the author of the email. That's 1 year. That's the revolving door. And the purpose of that provision is to avoid the appearance that you will have an advantage with your former colleagues. That's the revolving door provision. Then there's a permanent ban. After you leave village government, you are permanently prohibited from handling on behalf of a private employer the same matter that you handled in a substantial way while you were employed by the village. So, for example, if you work in the highway department and your job is to supervise the crews that independent contractors send in to pave the roads or stripe them, and you retire on Monday, and on Tuesday you show up as the foreman of the job that you were supervising the day before, that is prohibited, because it's the same matter that you handled while you were employed by the village. We do not prohibit something that the state prohibits its former officers and employees from doing. We allow you to sit in the office of your new employer and work on the application, advise your new coworkers how best to approach the village, give them the benefit of your experience from the time you were employed by the village. We allow that. The state doesn't. But we don't want you coming in and communicating with the village, with your former agency, because that creates the appearance that we're trying to prohibit.
Thank you. Do any trustees have questions?
We have a number of real estate brokers, salespeople on various boards, specifically Board of Assessment Review, as well as other boards. Are they prohibited from hearing those cases?
Well,
Somebody comes in, wants a reduction in their assessment.
well, interestingly, the Nassau County Charter has a specific provision prohibiting a real estate broker from serving on the Board of Assessors. But that applies solely to Nassau County and its officers and employees. The answer to your question is, I don't think I can say that it's a conflict in every case. You know, with ethics, really the devil is in the details. You need to know what the particular matter is that's before the assessment board, whether that individual has an interest in that particular property. And I'm not willing to say that because you are a licensed real estate broker, you have a per se conflict in all assessment matters. You'd have to look at the facts and circumstances of a particular matter. Unless, of course, this body, the governing body of the village, decides otherwise, as Nassau County did in its charter. So, you know, I try to always point out that when we talk about government ethics, we're not using the word ethics as if it means morality, because we're trying, while morality is important, we always want to have integrity, but we're also concerned about the appearance of integrity. And so not all of these rules prohibit conduct that would be immoral. You know, if a matter comes before you in which you have a personal interest, and you take the action that advances the public interest, have you done anything immoral? Certainly not. But you've done something unethical, because even an innocent conflict of interest has the effect of reinforcing in the minds of a skeptical public the idea that government is being run to benefit the insiders rather than to benefit the public. And so we're concerned about appearances.
One typo.
Okay.
You have section 2510, I think it should be 4110.
I actually use a special reverse disappearing ink. My mistakes only show up after I submit the document.
And
Good catch, Bob.
thanks, I had my notes and all of a sudden I'm looking and said, oh, there is no 2510. Caught that. Another question. Now, we're all elected here, and every 2 years there's an election. We run for re-election. We're looking for people to finance our campaigns. How does that fit in with the? I mean, should we not be getting contractors that work for the village or residents in the village? How would that?
Campaign contributions are not regulated gifts, as that term is used in the realm of ethics. There are different species of animal. Campaign contributions are regulated by the election law. Gifts are regulated by the Code of Ethics and by Article 18. Campaign contributions have a First Amendment dimension to them. It's political speech, and political speech is the most protected of all speech. So yeah, campaign contributions aren't prohibited gifts. However, having said that, the imagination, one can imagine a situation in which something improper is occurring with contractors. Again, the facts and circumstances would govern. I had a law school professor in torts. Those are civil wrongs, and his catchphrase was change the facts and you change the result. And so really it's the facts that are all important.
The proposed Board of Ethics, would that have any relationship or sort of a communication connection to NICOM or the State Board of Ethics, any of these other groups who could, if requested, return an opinion of sorts?
Well, first, the Board of Ethics should have the benefit of counsel, either its own counsel, such as, well, I'm currently serving as ethics counsel to this village, for which I'm very grateful. So I would presume that I would be counsel to the Board of Ethics unless this board decides otherwise. But
is that a conflict of interest?
No. But in the absence of that, the village attorney would serve as counsel to the Board of Ethics, and those organizations are resources only. NICOM is not authoritative in any way. It's very knowledgeable, and it's a great source of information, but it's not an authority the way a court case is, or even advice that you might receive from the comptroller or the attorney general. The state ethics, it's currently called the State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying. It replaced JCOPE, the Joint Commission on Public Ethics, and that organization would not involve itself in an ethics matter involving a local municipality. If the facts are really egregious, if there's some serious misconduct involved, you might interest the Attorney General, but normally not. So really, the Board of Ethics in a local municipality is the line of defense for integrity in local government. There used to be, as I said, a temporary state commission on local government ethics. It sunset out of existence in 1990. And since then, there's been no statewide agency that has jurisdiction over local municipal ethics.
There's a hotline of sorts, isn't there? Like a state level.
Well, there's professional. Their state bar association has a hotline for professional ethics. There are other organizations, as I said, you mentioned NICOM, that are valuable and useful resources. But no, I'm not aware of anyone who has kind of statewide view wouldn't know what your local code of ethics contained.
Sure.
They would only be able to opine on Article 18 of the General Municipal Law. And there are, NICOM, the New York Conference of Mayors, there's an association of counties, there's an association of towns. I'm lecturing to the Association of Towns in a couple of weeks at their annual meeting. So there are these organizations, they're all very helpful, but ultimately it's going to be the local Board of Ethics looking at a set of facts and applying the local code.
Yes, done. If there are no more questions from the Board of Trustees, we can invite public questions.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone?
Arthur Epp, 206 East Main Street. I might have a criticism or two for this gentleman, and we'll see how that goes. But first and foremost, I have 5 things to say. I read it for the first time yesterday, the 31 pages. And the first thing I want to say is thank you. Although this gentleman may have done the heavy lifting, it's obvious that the mayor and the board members have had multiple opportunities to deliberate upon this. And 4 months into this administration, this is an accomplishment. And I know it's a draft and we have a way to go, but still this is, everyone should be congratulated here. And I'm even going to say, yes, and Mr. Bondo? Biondo, I'm sorry. Okay. I also wanted to make, in expressing my gratitude, I wanted to make one other point, in that I understand our newly elected mayor and trustee, and I'm going to say that until we're 6 months in, had as their platform integrity. And I know this because one day on my windshield I had a flyer from the candidate, Lauren Shepro, saying that number 3 on the list was integrity. I believe you had good communication and transparency as number 1 and 2. And I see this as fulfilling that campaign promise. Plus, I remember I didn't get a flyer in my windshield from Trustee Giuliano, but I did attend his campaign event, and he spoke eloquently about integrity. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the name of your party. So again, you're both fulfilling promises made during the campaign, and that's commendable. Okay, number 2, I'm asking that we don't rush this, that we allocate much more time, perhaps 60 days, so the public can see this again. After all, the Supreme Court of the United States was established in 1789, and it was just last week that they issued their code of ethics. And you know, it's interesting because I read the criticism is their code just has no teeth because there's no mechanism to enforce it. We have a mechanism to enforce it, and it does have teeth. I'm not sure if the teeth are too sharp with that $10,000. I understand you want to have a big stick to sort of encourage people to do the right thing, but also our local court system, I believe we top out as $2,000 for a fine. And is that correct, or was that years ago?
I don't think that's correct.
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but
Years ago it was. Don't know what it is currently.
Okay.
So I just feel a little uncomfortable when there's a significant discrepancy between the Board of Ethics prospective fine versus our local court. Okay, number 3, to really appreciate this, I wish more information would be disseminated, because I read your 31-page document and I had no basis for comparison. I couldn't put it into context, therefore I had no perspective. It wasn't until I took the time to go and look at municipal law, 808, and see what New York State prescribes. Then I looked for and found Suffolk County's Code of Ethics. At that point, I recognized what's being proposed is quite reasonable. Before then, I was scratching my head saying, is this really atypical, or is it too extreme? I needed that to put it into context. And I would also say, relative to more information, I believe it's customary in this village when we change the village code, and in this instance, we're expunging or what are we doing relative to the old ethics
Updating.
code? Updating. Usually you put in italicized what the old code was. If we're moving forward, it's usually good to know where we've been. So I think it might have been helpful to show people what the old code was and what we're making it now. Okay, number 3, this is my main criticism. I honestly believe that this initiative will only be as good as the people we put on that ethics board. And I went through this 31-page document, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one solitary sentence prescribing who those people should be. And that sentence is section 4123C, which says, no more than 2 members of the Board of Ethics shall be enrolled members of the same political party. That's it. The mayor asked the question, asking for guidance, who are the best people? I think we need to have that in writing. I want to see a whole section as to who are the people we are going to choose. I don't want it to be hearsay. I want it in writing and to be concrete. And plus, even that one sentence is a little ambiguous. Political party, are you talking Democrat or Republican? Or are you talking a local unity party, liberty party, or integrity party? I mean, that could be anything. And again, if we could set some criteria for who these people should be, the best people, and to tell you the truth, I honestly feel they should be mostly apolitical. I don't want them affiliated with any party at all, if that's possible. And I should say, I had no idea about the $75 rule until 2016 when I attended a seminar by Patricia Salkin at Touro Law School. She was the dean at the time. And she had I guess she's an expert on land use and planning boards. It's the first time I ever heard of it in my life, in 2016, in her seminar. And quite honestly, I hadn't heard about it afterwards very much. It's great that you have it throughout this document to make it well-known and unambiguous. Okay, my last thought. It's sort of a personal statement since we're at Thanksgiving. And I did scratch my head when you said you don't want religious leaders involved, or generally you advise not to, because I want my local, state, and national governments to be both efficient and effective, and both ethical and compassionate. Compassion is a word seldom heard in the same sentence as government. I believe that needs to change if we are to have peace. Perhaps that can begin here and now. Compassion is important in government, just as ethics. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond? Sure.
I'd like to thank the gentleman for those remarks. I just want to clarify 1 or 2 quick things. I'm not opposed to religious leaders being appointed to the Board of Ethics. It was a cautionary statement about all Board of Ethics members must understand that they're not applying their own personal sense of right and wrong. They are applying the code adopted by the governing body of this village. Those are the rules. Those are the rules of the road that are being enforced. Secondly, the Integrity Party, the Good Citizens Party, the Party for a More Beautiful Port Jefferson, these are not political parties. These are independent bodies. And that provision related to the membership of the board, the composition of the board, would not apply to them. Finally, the board should be careful about too much definition in the code regarding the criteria for membership, because you can adopt it and you already are limited in the pool of appointees by the political multipartisanship. You want people with integrity. You want people with good judgment. You want people who the public will feel confident in. That's really the criteria. And I think you, as the governing body, will be able to make that evaluation and decide from among the candidates that you have who would best serve the interests of the public as members of the Board of Ethics. Let's see. Oh, and finally, anyone who wishes to see what the current code says, I mean, if I'm invited back to another Board of Trustees meeting where this matter is discussed, I'll be happy to bring the current existing code, but that is available on the internet. The village, I believe there's probably a link on the village's website. It's certainly accessible through eCodes New York, like most other municipal codes.
Anyone else from,
To my understanding, this code in its entirety would replace
Right.
what is currently on the books.
Repeal
Okay.
and replace.
Repeal and replace, got it. Thank you.
and that is in the code that's listed under 360 on our website, E360, code 360s.
Good evening. Zena Ugrinsky, 2 Rosita Lane in Port Jefferson. First of all, art is a hard act to follow, so I will not attempt to be quite as deep or, on this. But I do want to echo the fact that he pointed out some of the campaign promises that were made. And, as you already know, I'm extremely heartened that we've got somebody who's really stepping in to manage the financials. But I do think this was a very, excuse me, a very important exercise. I was a partner at KPMG for a number of years, and our code of ethics revolved around even the perception of impropriety, and that was documented, and we had to, there were obviously compliance requirements, et cetera. But I do have one question for you, and that is on the topic of whistleblowers, like what is the right mechanism for those complaints to get to the Board of Ethics for review, if you wouldn't mind? Thank you.
In addition to having counsel, the Board of Ethics should have a secretary. It should be someone who works for the village who's assigned to serve as the confidential secretary to the Board of Ethics. Communications to the Board of Ethics can be made through the secretary, through its counsel. When we develop a link to a page on the village's website, there will be a portal for submitting ethics complaints and requests for advice. Another thing, in terms of whistleblowing, there are some municipalities, there are some officials who think that a complainant should be required to file a sworn complaint, swear to the truth of the complaint. I disagree with that, and because the question is, I believe that the Board of Ethics should even accept anonymous complaints, because it doesn't matter what the source of the complaint is. It doesn't matter what the motives of the complainant are, whether they're political or personal or what nefarious motive there is in filing the complaint. What matters is whether there is an ethics violation. That's what matters. And if the Board of Ethics thinks that there's reason to believe that an ethics violation may have occurred, then, in my view, it's the duty of the Board of Ethics to investigate regardless of what the source of the complaint is. Ethics advice is different. Ethics advice should be a shield, not a sword. So the Board of Ethics renders advice only to village officers or employees inquiring about themselves or someone they supervise. So a member of the public would not be able to ask the ethics advice, ask the Board of Ethics for a hypothetical abstract question. They can file a complaint, but not seek advice. They can get their ethics advice elsewhere from their own advisors. So,
Quick question. Now, the term whistleblower has a meaning in law, correct?
Yep.
It connotates certain protections.
Yes.
So these are two separate things, aren't they?
Yes,
An
it-
ethics complaint and a whistleblower complaint are two separate entities.
This proposed law provides that complainants to the Board of Ethics will receive whistleblower
Blower
protections.
yeah. Okay.
Anyone else from the public?
Mayor, we do have a written correspondence.
Okay.
It was received this evening at 5:55 PM. It reads as follows. Dear Clerk Perillo, please include this email in the record for the hearing tonight on the proposed ethics code. I applaud the village's efforts to better prevent conflicts of interest. The proposed code will do just that by increasing accountability, education, and transparency. The creation of an ethics board will ensure questionable actions are prevented and corrected. I have one suggested edit. Because our village is nonpartisan, I recommend that Section 8 of the disclosure form, it says firm, meaning form, be deleted. Political affiliation is not relevant. The proposed code already contains a few instances where political pressure is addressed, which does not depend on affiliation. Thank you for consideration of these comments. Sincerely, Virginia Capon, 11 Overton Avenue, Port Jefferson, New York, 11777.
The board has a lot of flexibility here in designing that form because the population of this village is less than 50,000. However, I will say that the question regarding political affiliations is from the state form. And it's also from that state form as, you know, the kinder, more gentle form that was approved by the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics. So we certainly can discuss what this board's preferences are with respect to that form.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands raised and no more public comment, we are going to leave the public comment section open. So we are not closing the hearing, is that correct? Procedurally? And so we can move on, no? Or how, now, what now?
Mayor, in reference to leaving a public portion of the meeting open,
Mhm.
are you doing it for a particular time or a particular purpose? Because one option would be, just so that the board's aware, is to close the public portion of the meeting because it was advertised as a public hearing this evening.
Mhm.
We've heard the public speak. We heard the public speak. I would hate to see this board get in a situation poised to vote on the issue, and then the evening thereof, this auditorium be full of people who want to be heard again, even though the public hearing was for this evening. So I just want to make sure the board's aware of those options. One option would be to leave it open for 10 days for people to write into the clerk. But to leave it open-ended like that, it might be problematic on the evening we want to vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Just make one other comment.
yes.
I should have said this earlier, but I recommend that the board regard whatever code of ethics it adopts as a work in progress. And it should be reviewed regularly. It should, the Board of Ethics should weigh in on how it's functioning and how well it's working. And it doesn't have to be every year, certainly, but at reasonable frequent intervals, the board should consider whether this code of ethics is meeting the needs of the village.
And then procedurally, may I ask you a question? Do we, once the code is adopted, if the code is adopted, is that the point at which we start looking at appointing a board of ethics?
Yes.
Okay.
And doing the other things that I mentioned, establishing a website, developing a plain language guide, printing a booklet, all of that.
Okay.
And I will say that the state code of ethics, Article 18 of the General Municipal Law, was adopted in 1969 and has been the only amendment since of any significance is the financial disclosure requirement, and in the late 1980s. Otherwise, good government groups, bar associations, municipal organizations have tried and failed to persuade the state legislature to update their code of ethics, because ethics legislation is a tough lift in a political world. Elected officials are concerned that their electoral adversaries are going to use a code of ethics to beat them over the head with. And at the same time, nobody wants to be perceived as diluting ethics. So once you adopt an ethics code, it's politically difficult to then be perceived as weakening it. So for all those reasons, ethics reform is difficult. And I also want to say that I applaud you for your willingness to undertake this.
Thank you.
The board hasn't sort of had a roundtable about this to discuss these. This has been very informative, and I'm also very grateful for public comment to incorporate. So just, keeping that in mind, I don't know if there are substantive changes made to this draft code during a work session or a series of work sessions. Is that something then the board would need to present?
Substantive changes would have to be renoticed and re-advertised and represented.
Yeah.
Things like U4 should have been a 2 are considered Scribner's errors, and no.
Right.
And I think the materiality of the change would also influence whether further public comment would be necessary. For example, the code presently says that the Board of Trustees shall appoint. If we were to change that to say the mayor shall nominate and the Board of Trustees shall appoint, of course, it's a question for the village attorney and not for me, but I would think that would not require further public hearing, because it's a de minimis change.
So, does this board would we like to discuss right now how long we want to keep the public comment section open for? I'm suggesting probably our next public meeting is December 11th. So we leave the comments open. December 11th is a Monday. So if we leave the public comments open until the Thursday prior to that, give us
If a resident shows up to that public meeting, which has a public comment section in it, and wants to make comment about this draft code, that will be allowed?
So the next public meeting is December 11th,
Mhm.
Monday.
Mhm.
If we close the comments, and the clerk's office will continue to accept comments, right, which will be considered into the deliberation thereof. If we close public comments, that's 1, 2, 3.5 weeks worth of public comment is to be accepted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if somebody comes, I'm sorry.
The response to trustee's question, public comment is just that, public comment. They can come and discuss anything or nothing. So it's up to the official public comment for the board's consideration will conclude on a date set by this board this evening. Someone's opinion on that code after that point is just that, and the board should consider it just that. Not be determinative in your decision.
And December 11th is
And it certainly wouldn't
public
be entered
comments
into the public
session.
record.
Right.
And it wouldn't be part of the public record of the adoption of this case.
Yeah, I think 3.5 weeks is
3.5 weeks is
sufficient.
sufficient? Okay. Do we have to make a motion on that?
And we could even put maybe something on the website that says it's open for comment.
We will certainly communicate this on our owned digital channels.
Yes, Mayor, I believe the motion should be to close the public, to close this hearing this evening, leaving public comment, written comment open to be to the village clerk by the date set by the board. I think you said December 7th. That would be the motion.
Okay. Someone want to make that motion?
Motion.
We have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you all for being here for that public hearing.
Thank you, council.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Now, next on the agenda, board reports. Yes.
We have an add-on resolution.
Yes?
We have an add-on resolution which will be known as Resolution Number 14-112023. It is a resolution approving the proposal submitted by PKF O'Connor Davies LLP for a capital project analysis of 7 years of Village of Port Jefferson financial records at a cost not to exceed $4,500.
Sylvia, I hate, excuse me, in the back, it's kind of hard to hear, so if you have a conversation, please take it outside. Thank you.
Not to exceed $4,500 for each year analyzed. And I think we wanted to have the treasurer inform what that is.
All right, I'll just ask you, Clerk Perillo, can you just read that resolution once again?
Yes, ma'am. Furthermore, this will be known as Resolution Number 14-112023 because we will be renumbering the resolutions as they sit in the agenda. There is no need for resolutions number 1 and 2 as they are now sitting on the agenda as the Board of Trustees solicited legal advice about a contract, so there was no need for an executive session.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome. So again, we have Resolution Number 14-112023, resolution approving the proposal submitted by PKF O'Connor Davies LLP for a capital project analysis of 7 years of Village of Port Jefferson financial records at a cost not to exceed $4,500 for each year analyzed. And we now have Treasurer Gafka, who will explain what the resolution is referring to.
Good evening, Board. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but so when I came into Port Jefferson and I took a look at what was going on with the capital fund and the 2022 audit, which was available to me, I saw that there was a negative fund balance with the capital fund, and I tried to figure out how that came to be. And while I was digging into it, I discovered that there's a severe information gap for the capital fund, whereas there's a lot of procedures that weren't necessarily followed that are best practice financially. Setting budgets when you do a capital project, as in this is my expected revenue, so this is my expected expense. And that never happened here for as far back as I could see. What happened is that capital projects got approved, money got spent, it was recorded in the capital fund, but all of these expenses just kind of like a running tally on the expense ledger with no offset of revenue, and it kind of shows as a negative balance for all of these projects. That's not the case. I mean, the village had funding. We borrowed money, took out bands, got grant funding, took money from the general fund to fund these projects, but the trail is very, very difficult to follow. There's a lot of projects that go on in succession where you borrow money for this project and then you build on it and you build on the next one and you build on the next one. And then there's running projects that happen every year, paving projects, capital improvements to parks, country club, so on and so forth. So what, in consultation with Charlene Cagle from East End Accounting, and she, in talking with her and looking at the books, we thought there's not enough manpower here to really go and clean these books up. So we really needed an expert to be able to come in and to analyze each year of the capital fund going back. We determined 7 years, but it's entirely possible that that number could change depending on what may be found and what the board decides. To get a good record of what is going on with the capital fund, to clean it up, and to establish a clean slate for the village for every future capital project, and to really allow the village to thrive in the future, knowing it has clean books and that there are no other potential minor skeletons in any closet, bookkeeping-wise, that could hold the village back. What do I mean by that? There could be bond rating improvements that could be had by cleaning the books up. There could be future planning when it comes to your budgets as to what do you want to accomplish for the village of Port Jefferson. What do we need to do tax-wise to fix these holes? If we want to do future projects, how do we build up our reserves to be able to do that? Those are all questions that can't be answered right now because we don't know exactly what has happened over the course of the last, say, 7 to 10 years, just as an estimate, because there was so much that went on, and it's just hard to follow. So we really needed an outside opinion and an outside set of eyes to come in and to do this for us. And these are the best people in the business that do this. It's a very reasonable price, and I think that it'll really allow the village to take a step forward in the future to financial planning and to getting all of the books and records and allowing my staff to do their job more properly in the future.
Thank you. So that resolution will sit in the resolutions, or do we're not talking about voting on that now. We just got the explanation from the treasurer, and then we'll move forward with the agenda because we haven't moved into our resolution session of the agenda. All right? And then we'll release Mr. Gafka to go get the appropriate rest to take care of that stuffy nose and
Yeah.
congested chest.
Do you guys have any questions about any of that?
And just to be clear, as fiduciaries, we want clear books because we want to know what we're dealing with. And it's going to benefit the village in the future to deal with these clean books, again, because it will affect our bond rating, and our bond rating affects our interest rate when we borrow that money.
That's correct.
I was just going to note that, while it's an expense, looking forward, if there's that potential to better our bond rating, that's huge savings, in the long term for the village. So it's a short-term expense, but with potential payback.
Yes, and it allows for better long-term forecasting for your capital plan, and it can allow for a cleaner capital plan in the future to happen. So those are all benefits.
And the other thing it will do is you might have said this, I'll just reiterate it if you did, in a different way, that as we work through some of these capital projects, if they start exceeding the budgeted amount that we allocate to those projects, whether it be through a grant or through specific funding or however the project is funded, if the project goes over budget, the board has to review the overage and vote on that. Is that not true?
Yes, that's a good point. What this allows, and by budgeting your capital projects this way, my responsibility, as the treasurer, as I see that expense is getting, the expense line in the capital fund is getting lower and we're running out of money, it's imperative to be able to, if we need more work done, that the board authorize that funding. Because that funding has to come from somewhere, whether it be grant funding, we need to amend anything with the grants and those agencies we submit it from, whether it be amending a bond resolution to borrow more money, or whether we take from general fund reserves or capital fund reserves. Those are all questions that the board needs to authorize that spending, because otherwise we're just spending money that hasn't been allocated. And that's how you get yourself in a hole.
So I'll just say one more thing, and that is, I spent a year as a trustee voting on change orders and add-ons and not really knowing where the funding was coming from, but being assured that the funding was there. And as I work through this with yourself, Mr. Gafka, with the treasurer's office, with the clerk, and with my fellow trustees, I want this board to be educated about this process. And that has been my mission from the beginning, so that we are all aware of where the money's coming from and how it's being spent and allocated. And if we're voting on a a change order, we know, why did that change order happen? Why wasn't it originally budgeted for in the beginning? So it's an educational process that I hope you guys realize that that's kind of what we're doing here. And it wasn't, I wasn't privy to that process when I joined the board, but I want to change that, and I thank you for working hard on this and starting the process, and our experienced consultant, Charlene Cagle-Betts, and East End Accounting, and also now really looking forward to these reports to see where we can go moving forward and really manage our money, fiscally responsible.
I think, and I mentioned this in our session, and so the public understands also, because I always like to break it down to the simplest way possible. It goes to transparency also, because if you're told a project, name a project, it costs $500,000, but it's really not going to cost us much. We have a grant. So you're under the impression that the project is $500,000 and it's really not costing us a lot of money. But then all the money gets spent and they have to move to get the money from, we have to move to get the money from somewhere else. Well, as I said in our meeting, we thought we were getting a Camry, but we're actually paying for a Rolls Royce, but only getting a Camry. So from a transparency point of view, that's why we need to know what we've got. And I think this is a very smart move forward. Thank you.
Mayor, if I just may, for clarification purposes, having been in
Yeah.
the meeting, just to simplify it a little bit for the public, because it is complicated
Yeah.
municipal financing. As it stands right now, since at least from 2017 forward, the capital projects, in the way it was described, is a big ball of yarn. There wasn't individual separate capital accounts for each of the capital projects, which gives the municipality the ability to monitor that account, monitor where it might fall short, get explanations for the shortfall, and budget accordingly for it. It was just one big ball of yarn, and part of what this contract will do is unravel that to be able to create individual capital fund accounts, to be able to monitor them so the board can be educated on where they are and where shortfalls might be and budget accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, what this is going to do essentially is tell us what funding, make sure all the funding that was done correctly. Make sure that all the money that was spent correctly, and to find out where the shortfalls are for all the projects, and to determine how to fix it, and then wipe the old projects away, and you close out the projects when you're done. You don't leave them hanging for decades at a time, because it's just, it becomes a nuisance. It becomes, lint or, whatever other euphemism you want to use. It becomes something that can block your true vision of what's going on.
Does it also help you recoup the grant funding?
It can. Yeah, it can determine, if we left any money on the table and where we can go and try and find it. If perhaps something fell through, or we didn't follow through on something that was established, in the meetings and all the records that we have, that we needed this money and we didn't get it. So how can we get it? And if we can't, how do we fix the hole that not getting it created?
Okay. Everybody good? Yeah. Okay. If you'd like to make your leave, take your leave. Thank you.
Feel better.
Yeah. Now, may I go on? Yes. Okay. I would like to first start with my board report, and that is to formally introduce and welcome Andrew Freeling. Andy, we call him. Andy is our new Director of the Department of Building and Planning, and this is his sixth official day. He hit the ground running a week ago today. He has been diving into his office, the work that's going on in the Building and Planning Department, catching up with all the things that are happening there, and getting up to speed on many issues related to planning, building, And Andy, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
You didn't leave me anything to say. That's exactly
Oh,
what I've
no,
been doing.
yes, please say more.
Thank you, Mayor Shepro, Board. I'm very excited to be here. This is a great village. It's a very dynamic village. This is a great administration, in my opinion. I think you have some good people that have come on board. I'm excited to work with them. I'm just looking forward, and I'm very much interested in moving your agenda forward. And I have been observing and absorbing for the time that I've been there. I've learned some things. We've started to make changes already. And after the Thanksgiving holiday, I think you'll see that we're going to be moving forward aggressively in starting to implement your wishes and your agenda for this board.
Thank you.
So that's really all I have to say. I know you have a long meeting, so I'm just going to step off and let you continue.
Welcome back to Port Jefferson.
Thank you, Andy. They haven't given me your email address yet, but when they do, man.
Okay.
No, but truly, I found the
We can
email
give it
address.
to you.
Well, I have an
It's
email address at the village.
Yes, yeah, it's a. I figured it out, but no, there's lots of draft emails. So once you catch your breath and
Great.
do the great work that you've already started,
Great.
we'll have a nice.
You can, the clerk will
I'm
help you
not.
with
I'm
that,
not.
too.
It was a. You know, I make light of everything.
Right.
So,
Well, there's no breath to be caught, so come on down and
Very good.
anytime you want to.
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
All right. Also, I just wanted to give a quick update on, we are planning it's not the best kept secret in the village, a 60th anniversary celebration for the Independence Incorporation, which, hey, could be. It's just semantics. Oh, that's Dickens got that one covered. So just a quick update on how we are doing right now with the planning. The event to celebrate the 60th anniversary of incorporation is December 12th. It's a Tuesday. It is at the Village Center, and it begins with a dedication event of the Village Archive in the name and the memory of Ken Brady. So that's a half-hour separate event up by the archive on the second level, the mezzanine level of the Village Center. So all are welcome to that, to see how we will honor Ken Brady after his recent passing. We already have 125 individuals who have registered before the event, and there's still 3 weeks to go. So registration is free. There is no cost to attend this event. And so the event begins at 5:30. We are using this event to help LISEC raise money for its 1776 whaleboat project, in which we've talked about that quite frequently, where they're building a replica of a whaleboat that was used, the type of whaleboat was used to help transfer information from one location to another around within the Culper Spiring. So we've got a good amount of money raised on that so far. I'm not going to mention the amount, but all donations are welcome and graciously accepted from now until the night of the event, and then thereafter as well. There will be 2 live panels at the event. One will focus on former mayors and administrations. And also another will be a feature that highlights sort of business in the village industry, so to speak. We have Chris Ryan and Mark Sternberg, who are 2 renowned historians who will be moderating those panels and are also helping pull together a video to show at the event that night that Kevin Wood is working on as well. So we're grateful for that. Looking forward to seeing that. The whaleboat will be brought, in its current form, will be brought into the Village Center for all to see. We will have featured tables around the first level of the Village Center, featuring all of our not-for-profit partners and any others who wish to participate and highlight their services and goods, sort of, I guess. There's also a 1963 car, which is the year of incorporation, to just bring recognition to that year, and that will be placed on the outside of the Village Center as you enter into the event. So again, the tickets are certainly available. You pre-register on our website. You click on the 60th anniversary logo, and you can go right into the event registration. There will be food and refreshments there for the first hour, mingling, networking, and just remembering, kind of a time. It's called an event to remember, so that's got a double meaning, right? We're having an event, so we remember, and it's going to be an event to remember. So, yeah, so that is, I think those are the only two items I wanted to update you on tonight. So, next up, Trustee Biondo.
Thank you very much. I had the pleasure of watching Andy in action at the Planning Board last Thursday, and I am very confident that his expertise will bring that board and the processes into line with what the public and applicants expect. The one thing that I did want to mention that people might be watching is the Conifer project up near the railroad station, the second phase. The applicant was there, and the planning staff is now working with them to address certain issues with the prospects of preparing them for a public hearing in January, and we'll keep you posted on that. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was on the power plant. Last week, there was a LIPA board meeting in which something significant happened. They prepared their integrated resource plan for the next 5 years, which is a forward-looking plan that kind of projects where they think power needs will be for the next 5 years. With the onboarding of green energy and the offboarding, if you will, of legacy power plants, something did come out of that meeting which is very interesting. So they have to shed load as they increase power coming from green aspects. They can get rid of fossil fuel power, and that's in keeping with the state's green energy plans. So in this plan, what they're planning to do to shed load is retire steam turbines in each of the 3 legacy power plants. Now, why is that important to us? Because if they retire that turbine, it decreases the value of the plant and the tax structure might change again. So who should be watching? The school district should be watching. We, of course, are watching. We have a power plant advisory board, and we've been meeting, and things are moving along there. And we're going to plan how and make recommendations on how to attack or get a seat at the table with the future of the power plant in Port Jefferson. Now, understanding that this is really, really market-driven, and power needs will determine what happens with that plant. But if you also read in the in the LIPA documentation, it's on their website. National Grid is not just abandoning these plants, it seems. They're looking to future types of energy, hydrogen, battery, and things like that. So there's the potential that our plant, in a different format and probably of much less value, will stay here in some iteration. But the future, as we know, we can't predict it, and it remains to be seen what their plans are. The Port Jefferson plant, for their future plans, wasn't specifically mentioned, but that's something we want to get potentially a seat at the table at and help present our side of the story and tell them why it's important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Cassay.
Thank you. All right, so the Conservation Advisory Council met, and a resident had brought forward the issue of bamboo planting in the village, or bamboo creeping onto different properties. This is something that the CAC had looked at previously, but now there's a renewed interest by the administration to take a look and try to codify it. Brookhaven Town has a code addressing bamboo, but we do not fall under that code. So one of my first emails to Mr. Freeling will be to discuss looking at the Brookhaven code as precedent, and then seeing, if we want to adapt, any other municipalities' codes, or, look at this to present then to the board regarding bamboo. Let's see. The Beach Street garden wind down was rescheduled because there was impending poor weather. And so we are looking to schedule another date with the student athlete volunteers from the school, who I believe went out and did a great job planting tulips with our Parks Department. And, I heard wonderful things about that collaboration. So date to be announced on that. Just two other notes that came up in the meantime. Next Tuesday, so not tomorrow, but a week from then, the 28th at 7 p.m., there's going to be a presentation about the proposed development of Jefferson Plaza, which is just on the south side of the tracks. And that is at the Comswag Library, hosted by the Port Jeff Station Terryville Civic. I know it's not in the village, but I always think outside of the village lines to see what might affect our village in one way or another. So I thought to announce that here in case anyone wanted to go learn about that project at that presentation. And lastly, I just, for myself as a trustee, I was reached out to by a resident about an incident at the high school last week where a student wrote a troubling message on a desk. And so maybe to echo Mr. Epp's reflection about compassion in government, I just want to take a moment to reaffirm my commitment as a village trustee to making Port Jefferson as safe and peaceful for all residents and visitors as possible. And that's my report.
Thank you. I know Trustee Laux isn't here, but I couldn't help but notice in the paper during I don't know if it was Thursday, Friday, Hofstra students helping seniors with raking leaves. So I'll just throw that out there, and maybe there is a, if Trustee Laux is listening, maybe there's an opportunity to work with the student athletes at Port Jeff as that being another initiative.
Sure. I think I have heard of these programs before, and it's a very worthwhile, surmountable issue, but looking just at the insurance of going onto private property as opposed to municipal property to go and help these seniors. But again, I think that's very worthwhile for staff to look into to see is it school liability, is it the village's liability for coordinating a program, and then that would be a huge help, I'm sure, for many of our seniors.
No liability for the village if they come on our property?
I don't know. It's a good question.
How old is a senior? What do you have to be a senior? Do you know?
We have to get our attorneys back here.
What's an official senior age? 60? 62?
It depends.
65?
62, it could be 65.
Well, I think maybe not limited by age, but by self-identified need. So, there might be residents
I'm
who
identifying.
There you go.
I want my lawn raked.
Yeah. Now, is that a conflict of interest? Is that unethical?
I'm a resident. I'm just saying.
No, but it really is a wonderful idea to explore, because I know up in Ithaca they have a lot of sort of student programs like this, through the municipality it was, and students would actually get paid to do these things as well for free. I think is even more wonderful.
And if anyone gets in line in front of me, I'll certainly take the back of the line. All right, how about that? If it happens, I'm not saying. So thank you. And I just want to also thank a resident who brought the bamboo issue back to the fore. The resident will remain nameless, but I just want to express some gratitude about residents coming forward and asking if we could take a look at some of these things in earnest and see if there's an opportunity to improve the code as it exists. So
Okay.
thank you.
Our resident boards are always all ears to these things, and when requests come in to the mayor or the clerk's office, they get routed, and then you have a group of your neighbors who, live here and care about issues and are happy to have a direction.
That works. It works. Okay, trustee, I'm sorry. Trustee Biondo had
Just
one more thing.
on planning. We've heard a lot of things anecdotally about building code, fire code, this code. Is it enforced? Is it not enforced? It is going to be enforced. Andy is going to, at some point, notify all the landlords that whatever was before is no more, and the building inspectors, fire inspectors, are going to inspect our buildings. Because if they don't, it's a liability for the village. God forbid there's a fire and someone is hurt, or God forbid killed. Where are they going to go first? The building department to see what was, correct?
Yes, trustee, and in furtherance of that, I wanted to report, since it came up, that on his second day on the job, we had a meeting with himself, the mayor, building inspectors, law investigator, to start getting into how enforcement's done and to make it uniform, and so it's easily done and uniform, to avoid anything malicious prosecution or singling out
Exactly.
or anything. We are well involved in that process already, and in fact started on his second day on the job.
Okay. So, new sheriff, and everyone will be treated fairly, and we will follow the code. If you have a problem with the code, if you think it is unfair, if there's something we're not seeing, let's talk about it. We can change the code if there's a fault. But, I think the past practice was someone got a knock on the door, you have to fix this, they came to Village Hall, and all of a sudden, we didn't have to do anything. I think those days are over, and they have to be over. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee
Sure.
Giuliano. Yeah.
Sure, okay. Okay, real quick. We received a request, I think all the board got a memo requesting changing parking over at Conifer. So is that something that we should send to the parking committee, or? Andy, I don't.
It's actually, right now, the planning department has that information.
Okay.
So it's in the right hands.
Okay, because I know I
Yeah.
got a copy, and I think the rest
Yeah.
of the board got a copy, so I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that it wasn't falling through the cracks. Trustee Casey and I took a tour of the Harborfront Park today with Roger Casella. Roger, if you don't know, was the key person in building the Harborfront Park and renovating the building. They're moving along nicely. I think everybody is going to be very pleased with how it turns out. I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt going on, rumors about, the paths and everything like that. I think you'll be very pleased once it's done. And I also think that Roger led us to believe that they might be ahead of schedule, barring any unforeseen weather events. So that should be moving along. It's moving along nicely and should be done shortly.
Trustee Juliana, could I just add on
Sure.
a moment for that? Thank you. So it was, many of the concerns that have been raised by different residents were brought up during the walkthrough, and there's definitely the ability to explore should the current projected concerns become real concerns when the project is done, that there's already, then we can do this, that, and that. So I'm just glad to see that there was that forward thinking in the process to address, heat concerns or other issues, and that the village is already looking forward, should those things be an issue.
Like removing asphalt from all the streets in Port Jeff, so no dogs' feet burn when they're taking a walk on the streets of Port Jeff?
That was
that
exactly
an
what,
option?
that's exactly what we talked about today. So coming soon.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, parks. Dickens is coming up December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We have family night on the 1st, and rumor has it that there's going to be a member of the Board of Trustees that's going to be Santa's helper at the family night. So come on down to the Village Center and see if you can figure out who that is. And the other thing is, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. So.
Oh, Way to make us feel like clods. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
That was from the board, yes.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. You're always so polite. You're always so on top of that kind of thing.
I know Thursday's so far away.
Okay, so into our agenda items, all right? Clerk Perillo?
Thank you. Resolution number 01112023, resolution approving the minutes of the November 6th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 02112023, resolution appointing David J. Moran, Esquire, and Deirdre Cicero, Esquire, of Deirdre Cicero, Esquire, P.C., as the village attorneys of the Village of Port Jefferson for a term to expire on July 1st, 2024. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
For discussion, I respectfully request to table this motion for full board discussion and executive session on the 11th.
Do we have a second?
I would second that, when trustee Laux is back.
That's discussion, right? That's discussion? So we're going to table? Do we have a,
You need a motion?
I'll make a motion to table resolution 041120.
Second. Oh, he seconded.
He seconded already.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 03112023, resolution reappointing Mary Pelton as the village deputy clerk of the Village of Port Jefferson for a term to expire on July 1st, 2024. If I may comment prior for just one moment, I would like to thank Mary. She has displayed a willingness to be very well educated on the duties of the deputy clerk and to step up to what those duties are. And she has exhibited great teamwork. So I just want to say thank you. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And I will concur with what Clerk Perillo just said.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate Mary.
Thank you. Resolution number 04112023, resolution accepting with regret the resignation of Maria Aubrey as assistant to the mayor effective November 7th, 2023. May I have a motion?
Motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 05112023, resolution hiring Peggy Crowell as a part-time ATO, appearance ticket officer, for the Village of Port Jefferson Code Enforcement Bureau at the recommendation of Code Chief Andy Owen, at an hourly wage rate of $18.31 per hour, effective November 23rd, 2023. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution number 06112023, resolution rehiring Michael Sadecki as a part-time ATO, appearance ticket officer, for the Village of Port Jefferson Code Enforcement Bureau, at the recommendation of Code Chief Andy Owen, at an hourly wage rate of $18.31 per hour, effective November 23rd, 2023. May I have a motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 07112023, resolution approving the hiring of Kevin Sullivan as a full-time groundskeeper 1 at the Port Jefferson Country Club, as recommended by Country Club General Manager Tom Natola, at an annual salary of $34,086.25 per year, effective November 23rd, 2023, with all rights and benefits per the collective bargaining agreement currently in force between the Village of Port Jefferson and CSCA Local 1000. This hire is subject to the standard 26-week civil service probationary period. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 08112023, resolution appointing Melanie Gonzalez to the Village of Port Jefferson Business Improvement District Board as the Village of Port Jefferson Board of Trustees appointment. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 09112023, resolution dedicating the Village Archive located in the Village of Port Jefferson Village Center at Harborfront Park as the Kenneth C. Brady Jr. Memorial Archive. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 10-112023. Resolution amending Resolution number 11-110623 from the November 6, 2023 Village Board of Trustees business meeting to correct the line item expense number from line item number CR 7990412, education travel expenses, to line item number CR 7989409, education license fee. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Is there a brief description? Usually Stephen would give a,
Do we want to discuss? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
This is,
just for clarity's sake.
Basically, General Manager Natola asked for a correction in the line item from one to the other to take it into the item in which it rightfully belonged, in his opinion, and the treasurer agreed.
Very good, thank you.
You're
Right, I
welcome.
had asked Steve about that Friday, and that was exactly what he said. Word for word, almost.
Well, okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 11-112023, resolution amending the days of the Village of Port Jefferson Board of Trustees meetings to be the second and final Wednesday of each month, effective January 10th, 2024. May I have a motion?
A motion.
Second?
All in favor?
For discussion, so which one is going to be like the public meeting, if you will? I mean, I know the meetings are public, but the
Discussion.
The public,
first one?
The
The
work
first,
session.
the first Wednesday?
The first one?
Okay,
The first one, which will be the work session / business meeting, if you'd like to call it that. Let's call it the work session.
okay.
That will be beginning January 10th. And then the one after that, just for the public, the meeting after that will be the meeting which contains the resolutions, which will come out of the first meeting. Okay, the point is to have the first meeting with discussion, and then the second meeting having the resolutions that come from that discussion.
And that would be the meeting we'd be getting the code reports from and police reports from and everything like that,
And public comment.
and public comment,
Correct,
for the
Okay.
second meeting.
correct.
the second meeting. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think part of the logic, just for the public looking at the calendar, holidays often fall on Mondays or, people, Fridays. So just for consistency's sake, I appreciate the mayor and clerk looking at this option so that, hopefully more residents can attend and tune in as well, but also so that we're not, okay, it's a Tuesday now, and, now we have to push it to Wednesday and all this throughout the year.
Correct, thank you. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 12-112023, resolution approving the request of Cindy Court on behalf of Mather Hospital to hold the annual Mather Hospital Northwell Health Walk beginning at 8:30 a.m. on May 19th, 2024, with a formal event application to follow after approval of the proposed date and time. May I have a motion?
Motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 13-112023, resolution approving the check register and warrants dated November 16th, 2023, as presented by Treasurer Gafka and as approved by Claims Auditor Goodwin. May I have a motion?
Motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 14-112023, resolution approving the proposal submitted by PKF O'Connor Davies LLP for a capital project analysis of 7 years of Village of Port Jefferson financial records at a cost not to exceed $4,500 for each year analyzed. May I have a motion?
Motion?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution number 15-112023, resolution adjourning the November 20th, 23 meeting of the Village of Port Jefferson Board of Trustees at 7:58 PM. May I have a motion?
A motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Sylvia, just to clarify, the next meeting of the Board of Trustees is December 11th.
Thank you. The next meeting is December 11th, and there is historically only one meeting in the month of December.
And that will be a meeting that will be welcoming of public comment. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. See you at the Dickens Festival.
Look, they cut the filming and you said,